Hello, I'm Tracy Grimshaw. Welcome to A Current Affair. First, the high cost of shopping at IKEA in Australia. For the past 6 months, we've been keeping track of the prices the Swedish superstore charges here. And tonight we can tell you they're still hitting us with huge markups.
Why is IKEA ripping off Australians?
I don't believe IKEA is ripping off Australians at all.
Look, IKEA at the moment is ripping us off.
It's not right and it's not fair.
It's really time for consumers to wake up.
IKEA, it's Swedish for rip-off.
Why are you charging us twice, sometimes even 3 times as much as people in other countries?
We have a purchase price, obviously, that we buy our goods at, and that's different in every market. And from that, we have a lot of added costs.
Tonight, we're in Burbank, California, and Tempe in Sydney to prove just how much IKEA is ripping off their Aussie customers.
They will charge as much as they can get away with.
6 months ago, we exposed this international price scandal. IKEA taking Australians for a ride by charging us huge markups for the same products that they have on sale in the US and Europe. Well, guess what? They're still at it. And tonight, we'll tell you exactly how much more they're slugging you. And we'll also reveal a new plan by the government designed to stop multinationals like these coming here and ripping us off. Undercover in IKEA Australia, we find this baby's cot. It's selling here for $299. Now, let's go undercover in the American IKEA. Same cot, but very different price. $119 US. So how does that convert to Aussie dollars? Well, it's almost identical. The $299 cot will cost 119 Australian dollars in the US and 143 Australian dollars in Sweden, which means we're paying more than double. Here, the sofa is 699. In the US, it's 500 Aussie dollars, and in Sweden, the home of IKEA, it's 504 Aussie dollars. That means you're paying an extra $200.
I'm angry because they're basically saying, look, Australians are stupid.
Aussie icon Dick Smith believes the Swedish megastore has no excuse.
Now, IKEA have reason to have 10% more because of our GST here, and maybe a little bit more because we pay Australians decent wages in the IKEA shops. But for the markups they've got, it's ridiculous. It's basically taking Australians as fools.
Back undercover in Burbank IKEA. We're in the living room section looking at coffee tables. The price tag here says $49.99, but in the Australian store, it's double that. The same coffee table is $99 in IKEA Tempe, compared to $50 in the US. And check out this mirror, $477 in Australia, but just $150 in the US and $216 in Sweden.
Are you charging these prices just because you can?
Absolutely not. We're here for the long term.
David Hood is the boss at IKEA. He has the unenviable task of defending their massive markups.
It's not massive markups. It's very much marketing our products, and our prices to the local market.
But 300%? They are massive markups.
That's not a markup.
David Hood says IKEA is competitive when you compare their prices to other retail stores in Australia, and says there are additional transport and labour costs to get goods down under. We should point out that our price check found that IKEA's prices are slightly cheaper in South Australia and Western Australia.
And in the last 2 years, we've cut the price of over 3,000 articles, or roughly a third of our range, to our Australian customers. An investment of over $50 million. I don't think that's someone who's trying to rip off the Australian public.
They must have missed the rattan chair.
Well, here's the rattan chair that retails at IKEA Sydney for $249. Here's the same chair retailing for $119 at IKEA in the United States.
So that's a difference of $130.
That's more than double.
Customer Jeff Browett doesn't believe IKEA when it says it has to pay extra transport costs to get their products here because the chair is made in Indonesia.
How does a chair that's made in Indonesia, effectively up the road, cost twice as much here than it does in the US?
I don't know what the US does. I'm not responsible for the US. What I'm responsible for is Australia, our customers here, and the offer that we give our customers here.
So if you're responsible for Australia, why are we paying double for that chair?
That chair is priced according to the market.
What we really need to do is have a bit of a protest from Australians and say, come on IKEA, unless you bring your prices down to a reasonable level, we're going to not go to your shops.
So are you calling for a boycott of IKEA?
Not necessarily we should boycott because they have such fantastic products, but we should make it very obvious to them that we realise we're being ripped off.
Ausbuy's Lynn Wilkinson says we should all consider shopping in stores that are Aussie-owned.
For Australian companies to compete against the likes of IKEA, they've simply got to present better quality, and you're going to be paying for something that's better quality in the long run, and that's the value for money.
We've employed 1,000 people. We've cut our prices. I don't think this is a company that's making millions and sending it all out of the country. I think it's exactly the opposite.
It's not just IKEA. Our investigation has uncovered many multinationals ripping us off. Whether it's shoes, sunglasses, DVDs, makeup, even computer software. Companies are charging Aussies huge markups simply because they can. This pair of Asics men's runners, $150 in the US, $145 in the UK, but $240 here. Ray-Ban sunglasses, $70 in the US, $65 in the UK, but $150 here in Australia.
I reckon Australian consumers are being ripped off and getting a very tough deal.
Down in Canberra, Federal Labor MP Ed Husic has been campaigning for change. He's convinced the federal government to launch a parliamentary inquiry into why we're being slugged so much.
I mean, why is it that iTunes charges $19 if you're a US consumer to download Mad Men, but in Australia it costs you $25 to do the same thing? There's no answer, no reason for it.
Buying music on iTunes is a rip-off. If you buy Gautier's Somebody That I Used to Know single in the US, you'll pay $1.23. But here in Australia, $2.19. And the Beatles box set, $149 in the US, but $259 here. That's a 70% markup.
I think the good thing about this inquiry is it can potentially give a loud signal to a lot of these big companies that consumers aren't willing to bear these prices anymore.
6 months after our investigation began, IKEA says it will continue to review its prices.
We're here to stay, and I think for the longer term and the mid-longer term for the consumers, for sure, they'll come back over and over again to IKEA because they believe we do offer fantastic value for money.
There are plenty of people who wouldn't agree that it is value for money.
Maybe there is, but I think there's an awful lot who do, and I'm convinced that on the market, against our competition, that we are very competitive.
And we should be saying to companies like IKEA and Apple, look, we're part of a global marketplace, give us fair prices or rack off, we don't want you here.
And you can find a full copy of IKEA's statement on our website. We'd also like to know what you think about those IKEA prices. Let us know on Facebook or have your say on Twitter. Well, now